Number 15. Morning broadcast unidentified flying object. A morning broadcast in Newcastle appeared to capture an unidentified flying object whizzing through the background. As reporter Colin Briggs went through the morning's news, the live on-air footage captured some unidentifiable flying object speeding from the lower left corner of the screen and beneath the Millennium Bridge's arc as a webcam filmed the River Tyne. The news reporter later capitalized on the bizarre footage, calling on viewers to guess at what the unidentified flying object could possibly be. Needless to say, the video was uploaded to YouTube and watched thousands of times, with many viewers offering up their own theories. In the end, most seem to agree that the image was, quite frankly, an unexplained enigma. One of those people is former Ministry of Defense unidentified flying object investigator Nick Pope, who spoke on the matter. At first, I thought it was a bird, but the slowed down footage seems to rule this out. It's an intriguing film and a genuine mystery. Number 14. Poker Tournament Heist. When you're watching a poker tournament, the most drama you're expecting is an upset, a rookie beating out a world champ, but in 2010, viewers were in for an even more dramatic and frightening treat. The European Poker Tour tournament in Berlin was hijacked by armed men live on air. Not only did they pull off their heist, but they took home 242,000 euros. Although no one was seriously hurt, panic ensued and the crowd went berserk before the cameras were cut. Don't worry, the robbers were taken into custody and convicted shortly after. Their sentence, a mere 3 years locked up. Number 13. The Sunderland Ghost. You expect to be entertained by Monday Night Football, not frightened, but some people were when they saw a groundskeeper vanish into thin air in the background of the newsfeed. In the footage, Jamie Carragher and Phil Neuville discuss the events of the night while presenting at Sky Sports Studio. Live on air behind them, the TV sets show a groundskeeper at the Stadium of Light seemingly preparing the grounds for the upcoming event or repairing them after the game. As he crosses the field in Sunderland, suddenly he simply vanishes. Those who spotted the figure were aghast. Was this a ghost caught in action on live TV? Some say it may just be overlapping feeds, but others believe what they saw was real paranormal activity. Number 12. Whalers in the Antarctic, a reality show that can take a dark turn. Whale Wars follows the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society as they confront whaling fleets over environmental issues. The society has often faced off with a Japanese whaling fleet, year in and year out. By season 3, in the episode titled Sliced in Two, the two parties decide enough is enough, it's time to have it out. Up until this point, the battle has been confrontational, but not terrifying. The Sea Shepherd's arms of choice: paint, spud shooters, and noise disruptors. The whalers: strong and effective water cannons. This time, however, the whalers go all in, heading straight into the Shepherd's small ship. The Addie Gill is then, as the episode is so aptly titled, sliced in two. The ship lies and shatters on the open sea. The crew can't contact anyone via radio. It's one of the scariest moments in reality TV history. Even worse, the whalers start to lower an inflatable boat into the sea, likely to capture the crew and take them on board. The open sea is scary enough. Imagine being surrounded out there on the waters by your worst enemy. Luckily, the Shepherds are able to save their crew in time. Everyone survives, and no one is captured. A happy ending to another scary event caught live. Number 11. Dramatic rooftop capture. This more recent scary event caught on live TV happened in Kiev, Ukraine on December 5th of this year, 2017, when Ukrainian security forces captured the former Georgian president, Mikhail Saakashvili. As he tried to escape from a rooftop, he was arrested for allegedly promoting a criminal organization. Confrontations between police and Mikhail's supporters after his capture followed the release of this dramatic footage. More will likely be revealed about these allegations as the weeks unfold. Stay tuned. Number 10. Emergency landing. What happens when a flight goes haywire mid-air? Passengers of JetBlue Flight 292 found out firsthand on their flights from California to New York, a flight that ended in flames, smoke, and sparks. After the flight took off from Burbank's Bob Hope Airport, an indicator light came on noting that there was an issue with the landing gear. The front tires of the airplane had swiveled sideways and were frozen there, as the retraction gear hadn't fully retracted. With 146 passengers on board, the airliner swung laps in the California sky for 3 hours to burn off fuel, so that their emergency landing wouldn't be so fiery. They were told to land at LAX, as it was supplied with more emergency equipment and a longer runway on which to land. The pilot would land it using primarily the back wheels of the airliner. All the while, people were watching this scary event live at home on TV. Passengers were watching it on their tiny TV monitors on the back side of each seat. Loads of emergency equipment sat ready on the runway, while more than 100 firefighters awaited the landing. Time stood still, with thousands stopping on highways and watching from nearby buildings. As the jetliner made its final approach, passengers were told to get in the brace position as they prepared for landing. Needless to say, many feared for their lives in this moment, but the pilot managed to land softly on the runway, on the plane's back wheels. It was the smoothest landing I ever had, one passenger said. As its front end touched down, friction sent up plenty of sparks and blaze, but the fire subdued quickly. The passengers, and everyone watching, were relieved that this scary, intense event didn't end up much worse. Applause broke out on board for the pilots and crew. The pilot's cool-headed grit has since been praised the world over, as it should be. Number 9. The World Series quake. On October 17, 1989, nature struck its fear into the lives of loads of baseball fans. Game 3 was to start at 5:35 at the Candlestick Park Stadium in San Francisco. The stadium was filled with thousands of baseball fans, but before they could sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," at 5:04, the quake started to shake the earth, the first ever to be broadcast on live TV.
At second base, so the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we're having an earth.
According to Wikipedia, experts credit the timing of the series as a lucky break that prevented mass loss of life in the region. Key in reducing the loss of life was the fact that many people on both sides of the bay had left work early or were staying late to participate in after-work group viewings and parties, reducing the traffic that would otherwise have been on the collapsed freeways at 5:04 on a Tuesday. The ABC News crew was live on air at the event, and their feed was temporarily knocked out when the quake struck. The audio was restored before the video, and one of the anchors is heard saying the quake was the greatest opening in the history of television, bar none. The Goodyear blimp actually helped coordinate emergency assistance, and of course, Game 3 was postponed. The delay is the longest in the history of the World Series. When the game actually played out 10 days later, emergency responders were honored with throwing out the ceremonial first pitch. Pretty terrifying to watch. Lives were lost, but heroes came out of the woodwork, and that's a beautiful thing. Number 8. The Captive. These situations usually end badly. This one, although extremely frightening, ended as well as it could have. It was February 8, 1977. Tony Kiritsis, a 44-year-old man from Indianapolis, was set to meet about his mortgage with Richard O. Hall, a mortgage broker. Kiritsis wasn't making his payments, and a request for an extension was denied. Kiritsis was afraid that Hall would sell his property for the equity. After they'd gone in for the meeting as normal, Kiritsis led Hall out of his office with a barrel held to the base of Hall's neck. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment plan in action. Kiritsis had thought this through. The barrel was wired to Hall's neck, while the trigger was wired to a ring he wore on his index finger. This meant that Hall would perish if he tried to run away, and he would perish as well if someone tried to retrieve the gun from Kiritsis. Before leaving the office, Kiritsis also phoned the cops to tell them that if they attempted to intervene, Hall's life would end. He then led Hall through the streets of Indianapolis to Kiritsis' apartment, where he held Hall captive for 3 days. Kiritsis' demands that his debt be eliminated, that he wouldn't be prosecuted for his actions, and that the mortgage company admit fault. This is the scary part that was caught on camera. Kiritsis alerted the news media that Richard Hall would be reading a statement that he, Kiritsis, had written. Hall could barely speak due to the strain from the wire against his neck, so Kiritsis ended up reading the piece himself live on air. His delivery lasted for 23 minutes. When Kiritsis got what he wanted, Hall was released unharmed. Police, of course, prosecuted Kiritsis despite promising otherwise, and he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was thrown in a mental institution for 11 years. Later, he apologized for what he had done and said that he never wanted to hurt anyone. Thankfully, he didn't. Number 7. Most Haunted Ghost. Watch any episode of the reality TV series Most Haunted, and you're likely to see some paranormal events occur. After all, haunting is in the title, but one episode in particular seems to show the first ghost caught on camera in the 15-year history of the show, in which paranormal investigators pick over haunted sites. The episode in question was filmed at South Yorkshire's Wentworth Wood House, built in 1725. The private country house was forgotten in the 20th century and is often called the greatest historic house that nobody has ever heard of. The ghost appears in the form of a man strolling through a dark corridor.
Come on, if you hit, what's that? What's that? There. Carl, I can see it now. Go for it. I'm right behind you. Get your torch.
The show's host, Yvette Fielding, called it the most groundbreaking footage we have ever recorded. But rather than giving us the answer we were looking for, it just gave us more questions. Many claimed the footage was faked, while others said it supported the hypothesis that ghosts walk among us. But the cameraman, Carl Beatty, reaffirms that this was, in fact, real. We have never seen anything like this before. We really don't have an explanation for what we saw, he said, but the replay of the filming clearly shows the vision in detail. Spooky stuff caught on live TV. Number 6. Japanese tsunami. Live TV caught the earth-trembling tsunami that smashed into Japan after a magnitude 9 quake on March 11, 2011. The images that followed are pretty terrifying. The earthquake was so powerful that it was felt everywhere, from the fjords in Norway to the ice sheet of Antarctica. It was so powerful that it redistributed the Earth's mass and shifted it on its axis. Our day's length has been cut short by a microsecond. It was so powerful that Honshu, Japan's main island, was moved about 8 feet east, and as the tsunami traversed the Pacific, 110,000 nesting seabirds were taken out by the 5-foot wave. It was so powerful that aftershocks continued to hit Japan during the year that followed, 5,000 to be exact. It was so powerful that 6 years later, and the tsunami's devastation is still being dealt with in Japan, where of the 150,000 evacuees still left, whose homes were lost to the quake, a third are still in temporary housing. As for the cost of damages in US dollars, it rang in at about $199 billion, but because the earthquake was followed up by the tsunami, and both were unexpected, the 2-in-1 had devastating results. It got worse. A cooling system failure resulted from the tsunami at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, releasing radioactive materials. A horrible event in and of itself. Told you, nature can be terrifying. Number 5. A barren alligator river. No, this is not about a grizzly bear wading into a river. This is about a human named Bear taking his show Man vs. Wild to the extreme and venturing out into Alligator River, which is full of, you guessed it, alligators. If you're familiar with Man vs. Wild, you know that Bear Grylls' thing is to take a dive into situations where he might not come out alive on the other side. Instead of cracking under pressure, he uses his survival experience and his sense of humor to walk viewers through the experience with him, often with some educational bits thrown in here and there. Although the show's premise is founded on situations like this scary moment when Bear enters an alligator-ridden river is probably one of the most grating and fearsome ever on television. As Bear wades in, he nonchalantly tells viewers that alligators likely see humans as turtles or other prey, and they'll take you down like it's nothing. He would be a snapped twig if the huge reptile was to get him, which it could at any moment. Bear looks frightened as he dives in, knife in hand. Viewers watch, holding their breath, as Bear crosses the murky waters, but thankfully he makes it across without incident. Breathe freely. Sometimes fear is all in the build-up. Number 4. The Shadow. If you wander with ghost hunters, you're gonna get scared. That's what happened on The Past Hunters, a show in which ghost hunters investigate spooky haunted grounds and delve into the past. They also try to determine whether or not a location is really haunted. In the episode in question, they believe they've caught the infamous ghost of Staffordshire's Tutbury Castle, known as the Keeper, on camera for the first time. Tutbury Castle holds a number of ghosts, including Mary Queen of Scots, who was held in the castle a number of times by Queen Elizabeth I, but the Keeper seems to be the angriest, as he screams at guests from his suit of armor. The castle staff acknowledged to the co-director of The Past Hunters, Bex Palmer, that the shadow ghost was often spotted in the castle. Watching the footage, you'll see him creep into view, stand still for nearly 20 seconds, and then head through the room and disappear. Palmer spots the ghostly figure before grabbing onto Derek, the show's psychic medium, as he was determining the castle's energy levels. According to the show's hosts, the crew had paused filming just moments before they captured this footage. As bangs, footsteps, and taps were sounding throughout the home, this shouldn't have come as a surprise, as Derek felt a spirit following the crew around the venue during their first walkthrough. Palmer said that though she's pretty stoic during investigations, this one terrified her because the shadow seemed to be approaching them. The curator, Leslie Smith, mentioned a shadowy figure later on, and when we told her what we'd seen, it completely matched up. Palmer said she was just as excited as us that we captured it on camera. We couldn't stop talking about it for weeks afterwards. I don't know if I'd go with the word excited. After watching that footage, I'm feeling rather terrified myself. Number 3. The Toppled Statue. Another momentous visual history caught on live TV. The powerful image of the toppling of the Saddam statue in Firdos Square was broadcast all over the world, signaling what the Bush administration hoped would appear to be the end of what he started. Mission accomplished. Only their involvement went on until December 18th, 2011, so not quite accomplished at that point. The moment was one of the scariest and most powerful caught on live TV. Iraqi civilians, some of whom theorists believe were paid, and US troops came together to tackle the imperialistic statue, marking what was supposed to be a symbolic moment in the lives of many Iraqi citizens. On international TV, it looked to be a moment of spontaneity. As it turns out, it wasn't as it seemed. According to investigations on the matter, tight focus shots used by the media suggested that the square was packed, when it wasn't. Most in the crowd were also not Iraqi, but rather Marines and journalists. Moreover, the flag and sledgehammer were supplied by the US. The act was not as spontaneous as it was reported. The footage suggested that all of Baghdad was enthusiastic of the toppling of Saddam, but this suggestion was inaccurate. According to Peter Mass, a journalist who was at Firdos Square on the day, They were ready to latch onto a symbol of what they believed would be a joyous finale. It was an unfortunate fusion, a preconception of what would happen, of what victory would look like, connected at Fjordo Square with an aesthetically perfect representation of that preconception. Despite the illusionary nature of this event, this scary and iconoclastic visual is one of the most impactful caught on live TV. Number 2. The Fall of the Wall. In 1945, the territories in Germany were divided into 4 Allied occupation zones. As decided by the leaders of the Allied powers, the Soviet Union took the eastern half of Germany, while Great Britain, the US, and France took the western half. Berlin was about 100 miles from the western border, smack dab in the eastern or Soviet side of the country. Despite this, the city was also divided into sectors in June 1945, with the Allies again taking the western half of the city itself and the Soviets taking the eastern half. The Soviets did not like the capitalist city of West Berlin, located in eastern Germany, so they started taking steps to drive out West Berlin and its capitalist agenda from the region. First, they tried to starve them out of the city by setting up a blockade of West Berlin. However, the Allies airdropped in supplies to the residents, over 2.3 million tons of food and other supplies to be exact, delivered for over a year during Operation Berlin Airlift. In 1949, the Soviet blockade was finally stopped. The waters were calm again until 1958. Over the previous decade, around 3 million refugees and defectors, including skilled workers such as engineers, teachers, and doctors, crossed over to West Berlin from the east. This humiliated the Soviets. On August 13, 1961, the Soviet premier decided it was best to close the border by constructing a concrete block wall with barbed wire, officially dividing East and West. In this way, East Germany could keep out the fascists from the West and maintain their socialist state. In order to get around the wall, you had to go through one of the 3 checkpoints, at which East German soldiers screened travelers, diplomats, and other officials. The wall was later fortified, made much higher and sturdier, and on the East German side, a gauntlet-type area served to prevent any more defectors from crossing via floodlights, tripwire traps, and dogs. This wall stood from 1961 to 1989, 28 years. On November 9th of 1989, the border was opened. People were now free to cross again from east to west and vice versa. The live coverage of those crowds that swarmed the wall with hammers and picks to tear down this wall, as President Ronald Reagan so famously put it, was scary and exhilarating at once. Cranes and bulldozers did the rest. All of this fascinating footage was caught on live TV. The ensuing celebration that occurred as the floodgates were opened was called the greatest street party in the history of the world by one journalist. Though the event was celebratory, it was also scary, as no one knew what the future held in Germany. As it turns out, a united Germany would be a leader in the 21st century and one of the strongest economies in Europe. Before we get to number 1, my name is Chills and I hope you're enjoying my narration. If you're curious about what I look like in real life, then go to my Instagram at DylanIsChillinYT and tap that follow button to find out. I'm currently doing a super poll on my Instagram. If you believe ghosts are real, then go to my most recent photo and tap the like button. If you don't, DM me saying why. When you're done, come right back to this video to find out the number 1 entry. Also, follow me on Twitter at YTChills because that's where I post video updates. It's a proven fact that generosity makes you a happier person. So if you're generous enough to hit that subscribe button and the bell beside it, then thank you. This way you'll be notified of the new videos we upload every Tuesday and Saturday. Number 1. Shawn Nelson goes crazy with a tank. It was May 17th, 1995. What San Diego was about to witness would be one for the record books. Shawn Nelson thought he'd go for a joyride that day in an M60 tank. he broke into the National Guard Armory, rambled behind the wheel, and headed down Mesa College Drive into neighborhoods, crushing cars, busting open fire hydrants, and eventually leading police cruisers on a low-speed chase down Route 163. The crazy rampage lasted 23 minutes, all caught by TV news crews and police helicopters. The episode lasted until police subdued Nelson and he was lifted out of the tank. Although there are many questions to be asked about this event, the big question is why? Why did he do it? Nelson had enlisted in the army after high school and served in West Germany in a tank battalion. His service record includes disciplinary problems and led to his honorable discharge in 1980. When he got home, he had a nice enough life for half a decade, got married, bought a home, made a decent living as a plumber, but then his parents passed away within 4 years of each other, and he couldn't cope with what happened. His wife filed for divorce. 5 years later, his life was in shambles. He had no money, his tools had been taken, his girlfriend left him, his house was in foreclosure. This is when Nelson went off the deep end. Literally, he started digging a hole 17 feet deep in his backyard. He told his friends that there was gold down there. Nelson's breaking point made for a frightening reality on this day in 1995. Thanks for checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe because we upload new countdowns every Tuesday and Saturday. Or if you're still not convinced, here are some of our other videos that I think you'd like. Enjoy!